This is Bekkr. In this tutorial, we're going to look at a few more details on how we set up chains and work with chains. So where we left things off is we have a little arpeggio going here. Let me play it for you. First thing we can explore here is how to insert components in the middle of the chain. It's easy enough to find the plus out here to add something to the end of the chain, but let's say we want to add something in here. I hold down Shift and press the arrow key left or right, and it now turns into a little vertical cursor in between. Press Enter here, and I get my dialog to insert something here. So let's insert a little element here that I call the diatonic shift sequencer. The idea is that it's a little sequencer that will take the notes that come in and move them up or down within the current key and scale. This allows us to do, we could push one an octave up here. Let's hear this playing. So that itself is interesting enough, but by being 8 steps, it's kind of phasing with our initial other sequence, like that's coming from the arpeggiator. But if we make this a polymeter from the other sequence, now you can kind of hear how it's moving around, right? And it's giving us something much more continuously subtle. Another interesting thing I can show you here is you can also copy paste components. So in this case, I'm going to press Command C. Now I copied it. I'm going to press Shift right again to insert in between others, and I'm going to press Command V. And now I've pasted this component with the parameters set as they were here. So let's add one here. Let's make it slightly different. Shift here, and let's make this one, let's say 5 steps. So now we kind of have 3 polymeters going. We have the arpeggio, which is running 8 steps over a bar. We have the 7th step moving up an octave, and then the 5 step moving up just one here. Let's listen to this for a second. And all of these are additive, so these two could align on the same spot, and they would each just take the incoming MIDI value as it is and shift it. Which means in this case, you could end up with a note that was shifted 9 steps within the scale, right? While we're looking at sequencing, let's look at some of the other components here. Let's see what we can add to make this even more interesting. Again, pressing Shift and arrow key to insert something in the middle of. And you'll see in this little dialog that pops up when you're inserting components that we have different categories. If I press the keys left and right, I move between them. One of these categories is sequencing, and so this will have a whole bunch of things that you can play around with to kind of adjust and do different sequencing. A lot of it is focused on creating generative music. That is kind of like the main purpose here. Maybe actually a really interesting thing that will help us here is, let me insert something from the util menu, a media inspector. And let's run the sequence again. So now we can see what we're actually doing, which is super helpful. Maybe the first thing we could add here is, instead of a diatonic shift sequencer, we could just add a regular diatonic shift, just a permanent shift. And we'll shift this down by 7, so we'll move everything an octave down. This one does have a probability setting. We'll start out by setting it to 100 so that it hits every single time. And now you can hear, and you can also see from the MIDI inspector, that we're basically an octave down from where we were before. Let's go in here and change the probability a bit. And now we just have 25% probability that this will happen. And so now it's only a quarter of all notes that are getting shifted down. And we're adding even more life to our sequence. So far, all of these elements have been about setting the pitch value of each note, right? If you are used to sequencing anything else, something very apparent to you might be velocity. Everything is being sent off with the same velocity right now. If you look at what we see in the MIDI inspector here too, you will see the note, you will see the pitch number in terms of MIDI notes, which is the 62. You'll see V, which is the velocity of 100, and then there's a channel there, which unless you're sending MIDI out from Bekkr to other components, which you could do to external synths, you're not really going to need to do anything about the channel. But let's insert something here that lets us change the velocity, and then let's look at how we could play with that. So one way in which you can navigate this little dialog here, because there are a lot of components, I think I have about 140 currently, and I'm probably keep adding to that, is that you can just start typing to search. So in this case, I know that what I'm looking for is a little velocity sequencer. So I'm just going to start typing. And that's great. I'm not finding it. Right. Perfect fail here. Let's see if I can find it in here then. Maybe it's a one, the modulation. Oh, now I know why. Because I saved this as, I renamed this to a modulation sequencer. So this will give us a good chance to look at something else. I added this now. It's a modulation sequencer. What you might have noticed is that the minute I did that, we got a line above our chain. And you can have as many modulation lanes as you want tied to a chain. In fact, let's add a regular LFO here. You'll see now we have two lines up there. Each of those lines you can follow. There's a little connection from the component in the chain that creates the modulation and up to the line. So if we play again now, we should be able to actually see those values change. We're not using them for anything, but let's change that. Let's switch over here and use it for something. First thing where we could obviously use something for here is the decay length of the low pass gate. In fact, if you had a synth that was based on low pass gate, that would probably be a big part of what you would do with velocity. The way we attach a parameter to a modulation lane is that we hold down shift while we are on a parameter. In this case, I'm going to choose decay, and then we use the arrow keys up and down. And press up once, and now you can see I'm connected to the modulation lane that came from the modulation sequencer. If I keep holding down shift and then press right and left, you can see the little bar changing there. That's the modulation depth. And so essentially we might have one parameter that we want to modulate something by a lot, but we might also want to use it to modulate something else just ever so slightly. So let's start playing and see how this value changes. Adjust the sequence a little bit. Make this a little more interesting. And again, we can also control the number of steps here and turn this into a polymeter again, making this something that kind of moves around everything else so they don't have like a full velocity step hitting the same note in your regular sequence every time. Now we added this other LFO too. Let's first go in here and change the rate of it, just make it a little slower. And then let's add something else in the chain here. So we looked at a lot of sequencing. So far we just looked at one sound making thing, which is the oscillator. We'll leave that be for now. We'll do a separate tutorial on just oscillators. But for now, let's add just a little effect here, something that could be interesting here. So let's see. Should we do here? Yeah, saturation. Something subtle but meaningful. And so I'm again clicking enter to select the component, choosing my parameter. In this case, I want to change the drive based on that. I hold down shift and then I press up twice. And now it's tied to the other LFO. Can press arrow right to change just how much is influencing this. Add a little bit more to the warmth control here. This is probably a little more subtle, but you should still be able to hear the difference here. All right, hopefully this gives you a slightly better idea about how to actually work with Bekkr in terms of building up your change to sequence interesting stuff. Thanks for watching.